as a part of the BBRO research and development that we undertake, you know that we monitor aphids using yellow water pans as well as assessments in the field. Last year, we had to bring it forward to start, but we've taken the decision based on the information we have at the moment that the monitoring will not start until the 28th of April. So we'll get past Easter and then we'll start assessing the crop for aphids and monitoring with the yellow water pans at that point. And then we'll go live with the maps and the information that we provide on the BBRO website that Ches and the team will manage. So just a timely reminder to keep in touch with the information. Once you get past these, those maps will become live. And that hopefully then will give you an idea to appreciate so you can keep an eye on the aphids from that information and check your own fields. Having said that, we haven't found any in sort of commercial situations. Without being flippant, I have found aphids this winter. I actually found them on protected pansy plants in my in-laws garden at quite high levels. They weren't Myzus persicae, but they were Myzus ascalonicus, which is the shallot aphid. And that just serves as a good reminder that although winter has helped us for once for aphid control, anything that's protected or sheltered and hasn't been exposed to the cold weather potentially means that they can then start to build at this time of the year and start to develop wings, and then we'll start to migrate into spring crops like sugar beets and potatoes and anything else. So the first point I really wanted to make was hygiene will be critical. I'm conscious that the Newark factory continues to process beet, so there's still beet in the ground going into that, although hopefully finishes next week. 3 East Anglian factories have finished, as we know. But anything, spoilage heaps, any remnants, root remnants, any beet that could actually harbour aphids and virus, we really need to be dealing with. And anything that, like game cover strips or even some of the SFI initiatives, I know that it's an emotive word at the moment, but things that are in the ground that could harbour aphids and need dealing with, please do so to minimise that risk. Because although I've started on aphids and virus in this presentation, the root remnants will also be harbouring things like Cercospora, downy mildew, and 1 or 2 other pests and diseases. And actually, we found some Cercospora that had overwintered on some beet only earlier this week. So again, we'll talk about disease control later into the season, but just minimize the risk to maximize ultimately your crop's performance later in the season. So when it comes to control, encouragingly, the breeders are making good progress. And I'm sure if you saw the recent recommended list for 2026, there were 2 additions with virus yellows resistance to build on the variety Marushka KWS that came in 2022. You've got another addition from KWS generosa that has an increased yield performance of about 4% in the absence of virus. And then one of the Struber varieties, Tweed, has now got a trait claim for virus yellows following some further work, and that's around about 96%. So it's like a classic situation. We are seeing the breeders making progress. The problem is it's 3 viruses, and that is the challenge, unlike Rhizomania or Beet's nematode. But it does give us tools as we go forward. And what we'll see is the yield gap in the absence of virus against the standard elite varieties start to disappear. It'll take a few years, but we're on that journey. What we do need is broad spectrum resistance, and again, the breeders are working on. They're making good progress against beet mold and beet crisis. Beet yellows is still a bit of an Achilles heel, but that is progress, and potentially you've got that opportunity to look at those varieties going forward and anything else that comes our way. Now, when it comes to this year, with aphids not flying till the middle of May, one method that can be used, and some of you may or may not be trying it for aphid control, but could be using it for windblow and protecting the beet, is undersown barley. We know that works. If you remove the contrast between brown and green, aphids tend to keep flying rather than landing and settling in field. The caveat to that, and where we may have an issue if you are thinking on using it for that, is that if the aphids aren't flying to the middle of May, the one thing that needs to happen if you're using it for aphid control is it needs to be taken out at an early stage before it outcompetes the beet. So if we had aphids flying in March and April, then it probably would be worth doing. This year, I would suggest it's probably not as advantageous as it would be in an earlier aphid migration window. But if you are using it, make sure you take it out, because the last thing you want to do is for that to compete with your sugar beet and have a detrimental impact on the final yield. Now, there are other strategies that we're working on, colours, other repellents, and one or two other things. They're not commercially available for 2025, but we will be doing lots of work behind the scenes this year with our trials, as we always do, looking at new aphicides and different strategies. And the good news, thanks to the good weather at the moment, we're making good progress drilling our trials, and we'll continue to do so through the weekend and into next week when we can get a chance with the weather. But some of you may have read the BBRO bulletin that went out at the beginning of March and may have heard me on the platform talking about what you could do for strategies for 2025. And at that stage, we were talking about you having 2 foliar insecticides for controlling aphids at threshold. Those 2 products are acetamiprid, i.e. in Insist, or flunicimid, as in either Topiki or Afinta. Now, what has happened in the last 3 weeks is that in February we applied for an emergency authorization for a second spray of Insist or acetamiprid, and I flagged that at meetings, and we flagged that in publications. But what we hadn't anticipated was the full label approval of Bayer's new insect or aphicide, which is called Sivanto Prime, that has come out in March. Now, that product, it's great news to know that we've now got a fully approved product, and that means that we don't have to spend so much time for applying for emergency authorizations. And actually, on the back of that publication and approval process, we have withdrawn the emergency application that we'd put in for the use of a second spray of Insist. So it does mean now that for 2025, you have 3 active ingredients. Sivanto Prime is similar in its resistance class to acetamiprid or Insist, but very different to flunicimid. So if you look at the labels, they do suggest for resistance management, which is also important for longevity, to not go back to back. It's not compulsory, but we would advise to do that. But it does mean we have that opportunity to do that. But given the season, and given that we're probably not expecting aphids to breach thresholds probably until 3rd week in May at the earliest, it'll be an interesting season to see how many sprays you are going to need, given how quickly the crop hopefully will be growing at that stage, basing on the lots of it going in now, which is really positive. And so I would encourage you to look at new chemistry if that's appropriate on farm, but you also know how to use Insist and the flunicimid based products. The Sivanto is an aphicide, and it's worth just checking the label or getting your agronomist to check the label with regard to some of the beneficials profile, which may be better. Although when you've had a cold winter, beneficial insects can come in later into the crop. So it's just worth reflecting on it. We have got limited data in BBRO. I've had quite a few questions about sequencing it. Actually, it's difficult for us to say that from the opportunities that we've had a chance to look at it. We will be doing further work. But yeah, worth having a look at. It's something we don't know about a price, and that's something you'll have to discuss with agronomists and distribution. But the positive is we do now have those 3 active ingredients that gives you some confidence, hopefully, to control aphids as they come into the crop for 2025, if they get to that stage of causing a problem and needing to be controlled as we go through. So that's where we are. We will start issuing the bulletins and keeping you up to date as we always do. As I said, we'll have the information live on the website. So that doesn't mean to say if we find them at a certain site near your farm, go please check your own circumstances as well, because you may not need to spray them, and it is specific to field. But I actually feel, given where we were 12 months ago, we're hopefully in a much better position, and hopefully aphids and virus yellows don't cause a major threat to the crop. And what that also allows us is to work with the wider industry to develop and hopefully bring to market products for 26, 27, 28 that will give you further strategies of being able to control this problem. So it then is no longer the issue it had been in previous years. That's probably everything I wanted to say on aphids and virus, Chairs. Are there any questions in relation to that before I hand to Pam to talk about weed control?
Mark, it's John Young here.
Hi, John.
I've noticed quite a lot of ladybirds about, which I find quite surprising, but that's good, I would think.
Yeah, that's positive and great to hear, and me too. What can happen is when you get a warm period like we've got this week, they can flush and then they will reproduce, and hopefully we'll start to see eggs. What that may mean is that the larvae and aphids, sometimes they get out of sync with the aphids. Hopefully that won't happen, but I've seen it in previous years. It happened in 2020, where there was an early flush when it was really warm in February, and when we needed them in early April, there were very few, and then they built up quite quickly when we went through May and June. But anything that we can do, John, to look after them is important, and that's a really good observation. The one thing I'd also make is it's all about using appropriate chemistry as well. And we know that the products we've got primarily aphicides, 2 of the 3, but we need to be looking after those as much as possible, and avoiding the use of pyrethroids at all costs, to then look after the beneficials that hopefully then job and support aphid control in your fields.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions from anyone? No, it looks like you've answered all the queries so far, Mark. Should we hand straight over to Pam? We can always come back to you if there's any questions that arise in the meantime. But Pam, welcome along to BeetChat. Obviously, we're always pleased to have you here, and your knowledge is invaluable to all of us. So I'll let you give us a quick update on what's happening in field and what you've seen.
Oh, good morning, everybody, and thanks for the invite, Ches and Mark. And I guess at the moment, the thought is whether the pre-em should be applied or not. A lot of beet has been drilled this week, and some the previous week as well. So looking at soil bed conditions, I think at depth, generally quite a bit of moisture there, but they are drying out on top. My feeling is that pre-ems would still work quite well. The last 2 years, we've had very good results from them. In particular, where we've got black grass, I think it's now, fully understood that it's useful to put some ethofumicate there in as a pre-em. But pre-ems do bide you some time as well, and I think we will be busy this spring. So, yeah, conditions are looking good, some moisture there, and consider putting a pre-emergence spray on. We only have a few actives that we can look at for the pre-emergence timing. Ethofumicate and metametron are the 2 ones that I go to, but we've also got quinmeric available. It's available, I think, only in a tank mix with metametron as a Goldix Titan. It can be useful if we think we've got any resistant poppies there to chemistry we might be using later on as a post-emergence spray. So it's worth thinking about that quinmeric there for poppies, and it can be useful. The other active available is clomazone. Be careful with that on light soils. In fact, I think there's a label restriction there not to put it on the very light soils. So that is an option that is also available. The other query that has been coming in recently is about tank mixing nitrogen in with these pre-emergence sprays. And historically, we often used to do nitrogen and in with chloridazine, which obviously is no longer available. But there has been a number of tank mixtures carried out by Omex, Yara, some of the manufacturers as well, looking at nitrogen and nitrogen sulfur liquids going in with metametron and ethofumazate. What I would say there is do check and make sure that you do have a supported tank mix, especially if you've got a sulfur nitrogen formulation. You can sometimes see when sulfur is included that you will get some sedimentation and some issues, mainly I think when metametron is included in the mix as well. So yes, you can get supported mixtures for putting liquid fertilizer in with the metametron and ethofumazate, but make sure you've got support there from the relevant manufacturer as well. Another thing, what a lot of you hear me talk about recently is resistance, and I think when you hear me talk, I've said it's showing up where we've been using the smart varieties and Conviso 1. And Conviso 1 consisting of what we call group 2 mode of action chemistry, and that mode of action is used widely across the arable rotation. And so there has been known resistance to poppies and mayweeds for some time, but we're only now seeing it appear in the last couple of years in sugar beet. So we have been doing screening work with ADAS, and we have seen that there is problems with chickweed and poppies, and we're continuing doing some work again this year where we're looking at validating a rapid test which will give us results within 7 working days, which will be brilliant. So the message for me today is that if you are using the Conviso 1, just check and make sure that you are getting good control of all your weeds. If you're worried or concerned, then it's worth a call to your agricultural manager or myself or BBRO just to let us know so we can perhaps investigate further. And it is exciting what we're doing going forward on that to develop rapid testing. If you know that you've got resistance and you know you're putting a smart variety in, then that's where, as I mentioned earlier, it's worth looking at putting some Quinmeric Goldtix mix in as a pre-em, or being very prompt with your early post-emergence sprays when the poppies, mayweeds, chickweeds, etc. at very small growth stage, to put some conventional chemistry on before you move on to the Conviso 1. The other thing to watch out for, I think, very early on will be what you're actually applying with your post-emergence products. Last year we did have some issues, mainly I think because some quite heavy mixes were going onto the crop at early growth stages, followed by a very high level of rainfall quite soon afterwards. So in that situation, if we do get weather forecast predicting heavy rain, if possible, delay any sprays so you're not putting a herbicide on and then having heavy rainfall within the next 24 hours, or look very carefully at what tank mixes you are applying. And Ches, I believe you've put on the website, BBRO website, the crib sheet from the BeetChat, where I was talking, given some key points about weed control for this season, and that will give some information on the different actives and how safe or kind they are to the crop early on. And just to say, metametron is a very kind active and can always be used as a hold and spray if you are concerned. And another thing what I often mention is unusual weeds. Again, a little bit early probably be talking about that, but when I've been looking at crops sort of probably in a month or so's time, just watching out for any weeds that are not common on the farm and make a note of those and try and restrict their movement further into the crop. In particular, I'm seeing things like mugwort, barnyard grass, etc. These are weeds to look out for. And as I say, if they're still at the stage where you can hand pull or remove, do so, although I know that is a difficult option. Another thing to think about is we use clethodim quite a lot post-emergence for grassweed control. Don't forget there's a number of different formulations out there now. There's a 120, 180 and a 240, I think it is. Do check on that. So I think it's 120, 180, 240. They have different labels and allow you to put different amounts on. So if you're using a clethodim product, do check the label to make sure you get the rate and quantity right. And I think the final thing from me, unless there's any questions in the chat, is the chairs before I move on to what we're doing this year. Is there any questions for me at all?
Nothing in the chat at the moment. I've just put a couple of things in there to remind people at Basis Neroso events. But anyone like to raise their hand for a question?
No, I think the questions usually start to come in to BBRO and myself once we get to like the second or third post-emergence spray, because that's when we start to see problems start and where perhaps not getting such good control or got a bit concerned about what to do next. So I guess it'll be a bit later on in the season. So I'll just give a quick update what's happening this year. We are it's very kind of BSF to include us in one of the trials they're doing on dimethanamide P, which will be coming out as a straight next year. And so there's a trial which has actually been it's drilled, and I believe the preems were applied earlier this week. And if anybody lives in Norfolk or Suffolk, it would be useful to come and have a look at that, assuming everything goes well later in the season. Because that will be new to us as a straight and it being an EC formulation, and we'll be looking at different tank mixes there, the crop safety efficacy point of view. So that's quite exciting. And also there's a new active from Corteva. We did look at it last year in trials, but again it will be in the 2 BBRO trials this coming year if all goes to plan. One up in Lincolnshire at Navenby on Mark Ireland's farm, and another one on Breckland soil, which is Alistair Wright's farm. And I'd advise to try and get a look at one of those trials, because whenever we have a new active being introduced, it's useful to see how it works, what tank mixes we can do, crop safety and all that sort of thing. So that's another exciting development. And finally, on trials, there'll be a large-scale demonstration, which is actually a British Sugar one at Yaxley in Suffolk, not Yaxley Peterborough. Following on from work last year, where we was looking at tractor hoeing, band spraying, along with conventional chemistry. And we're hoping very much that it looks certain that we'll have the eco-robotics in that trial as well, which will be interesting to see how that perform. So I think that's a quick roundup from me now, Chairs, unless there's anything from anybody else that they'd like to add. Oh, one important piece of news is this is just a verbal confirmation from one of the manufacturers that within Europe, Fenmedifam is no longer going to be classified as an endocrine disruptor. So that makes it look a lot more hopeful for that going through with renewal. Obviously not certain, and I've not seen it in writing, but that looks hopeful from the European perspective. From GB, we obviously have to wait and see what CRD will be doing.
Thank you very much, Pam. Pam also mentioned the 13th of May being a British Sugar event to look at one of the weed control sites. But on the 14th, we've also got the BBRO demo farm starting. And on the 14th morning, we're at Morley, afternoon, we're at Cambridge, and then on the 15th, we're at Navenby, which again is where one of Pam's trials is taking place. So hopefully she'll be joining us at that point as well, so we can catch up there. For those of you that are towards the north, we're also going to be doing a northern tour later on in the year. So we don't have a demo farm in your area, but we will be making sure that we catch up with everybody in that space. Right, have we got any other questions from anybody? No, doesn't look like it. Pam, Mark, have you anything else that you wish to add?
Just a quick comment to remind that the plant clinic is there to be used if you need it. The jot forms are now available. You can upload it by your phone or ask your agronomist to do that, or work with your agricultural manager from British Sugar. You know, we are keen just to keep an eye on what's going on in the crop. We have new projects starting on within BBRO, looking at seedling diseases and getting a better appreciation what we have, especially with some new seed treatments coming in for fungal diseases. We're also going to be keeping an eye on a new pest if it's here, which is causing some big problems elsewhere in Europe. And we will continue to do work looking at beet moth control strategies. I've had some quite interesting results from my team over the winter that shows that we may have a way of controlling beet moth if conditions become dry and warm, and if we needed to go for an emergency route, then we'll keep you posted. But yeah, it'd be good to see you all in May when we do the beet field events, if that's at all possible. It's time deliberately for when the aphids are just starting to fly, and we can reflect on strategy and the threat and what we need to do, and just keep an eye on the BBRO bulletins and the website, because once we go live, if there's any early aphids, given this rather nice weather that we've got at the moment, maybe that's going to bring things forward just a little bit, although it could be tempered when it goes slightly cooler next week. Yeah, so it will keep you right up to speed with real-time information, so keep an eye on it.
Thank you very much for that, Mark. And just big thank you to all of you for attending this morning. We do understand it's a very busy time of year, and particularly with the warm weather we've had. I know certainly for BBRO, our drills are out, and we're getting the seed in the ground. So I'm sure many of you are either already underway or about to start. So thank you very much for your time, and a huge thank you to both Mark and Pam for joining us as well. So yeah, good day to everybody.